Authentication and authorization. The two terms that every developer at some point in their career journey have heard about it, encountered it, developed something for it, or banged their head against the wall because of it. But most of the challenge is inside the authorization, I believe, due to really vague requirements from your manager, perhaps. But don't tell that to him. Scratch that actually. Forget about it. We are going to focus on it later, and then we are going to solve a lot of issues with that as well. Today we are going to focus on authentication. What is authentication? The knowledge of knowing who is accessing your protected resources. Let's say that your protected resources is your house. How do you authenticate that? You give the person a key, and the person can access your apartment with a key. This is the same as we do in the digital world. We give them credentials. The credentials is their key, username, password. With the username, we can find who they are, and then we can hash their password and then check it with the hash saved in the database. And then we know they are the same. I'm not going to get into that yet. Then we let them in. That's the basic way. So the old time, we had the basic authentication. With the basic authentication, that was like that. You have a username, password. Then you will enter this username password, you will access the resource. Maybe the backend now creates a session, manages it with a cookie in the UI, or the developer will just send the basic authentication every time with a request to the backend. Well, in this case, what if the basic authentication is stolen? The problem is that it is a permanent key. Now they can access it unless you actually change it and you notice it. You may never notice this actually, that someone has stolen something. So, or maybe the cookie is going to be stolen. So everything here is a little bit dangerous. It sounds a little bit dangerous, especially if the user has said, oh, keep me permanently in here. So this is a bit not safe. And it's not scalable, to be honest, because you don't have much information inside this basic authentication. You have to actually fetch the user's information on the backend yourself, like a lot of it. Now let's come to now. So what happens now? We are using OAuth 2. It's a token-based authentication. What does that mean is that you give your credentials, then the identity provider will issue you an access token. Now, what is inside this access token? This access token is combined with payload and a signature. So the payload gonna contain some information about you, your ID, your profile information, and a limited time. So it has an expiration inside it. Then the signature is signed based on this payload and the private key that the identity provider has. So then this way, if someone changes this payload, then the token is not valid anymore. So as you see, this token is a standalone. Now you can actually send this token to every server that has access to the identity provider's public keys, for example, that can verify the signature comes from this identity provider and then can let you in. So then this token can just be working on its own. You normally don't need to fetch a lot of information about this user. The ID of the user is already in there, and then you can perhaps fetch some resources based on this logged in ID from your databases. So what is this identity provider? So now we have a new term here. So the identity provider, either you are going to use a third-party cloud-based identity provider like Okta, or you are going to have your own identity provider like this Identity Server 3, I think it was in .NET. Identity Server 4, I guess, was there, or 5 was, it was not free anymore. I don't remember because I never used it. So, or you have a legacy application. If you have a legacy application that using a legacy identity provider, please convince your manager to change it, because it can be really tricky. And then every time that a request comes in from another company to work with you, then you have to have hours of meetings. Just a side note to notice that how much will it affect your time. Anyways, the other case is that you have a third-party identity provider which is open source. We talk about Keycloak. Keycloak is an identity provider which is maintained mainly by Red Hat. It's started by Red Hat and owned by Red Hat, but it is open source. So the community can contribute into it right now. Actually, a really huge community is contributing into it. So we are going to, in this video, set up Keycloak. We are going to configure a client for our UI. Then we are going to see how we issue a token in the UI and use it in a REST call and a GraphQL call. against a backend which is protected, which has protected information, and we need access token to access those information. And so I would say let's just start set up the Keycloak, and then we see how we go further. To install Keycloak on Kubernetes, we are going to use its Helm chart. So as you see, it is provided inside the Bitnami repo, and let's check what do we need from this Helm chart. I'm going to add the values. So any Helm chart actually that you want to install, there are certain points that you need to check what are the default values for. The first thing that I always check, mostly for the database Helm charts, is the replicas, because well, most of the time those databases have the replica set to 3, 4, 5, and then if you install that chart, then you will have 3 storages installed for you, and then you have to pay for it, especially if you are on a cloud environment. So in this case, it's set to 1. With this Helm chart comes a Postgres subchart. So this is the first thing I want to disable. Mostly you, me, right now, we have our own Postgres. We want to use that. So this means I do not need this. So in order to do that, I have a values YAML ready, and I'm going to just say Postgres enabled false. Then, so which database now should I use? Then I'm gonna come to the external database, and so this is where you actually add your plain information for the database. I rather to use the existing secret. It's better not to do this, especially for the password, because then the value of the password will be inside your Helm chart. So, and your Helm values, when someone says Helm get value Keycloak, like namespace Keycloak, then they will see your password just inside the values, and that's not good. So in this case, I'm just now going to use this then. So I'm gonna take this and come here and say existing secret. And beforehand, I have actually created right now a secret for my database. So it looks like this. As you see, I have my database, the host, the password, port, and the user of the database all in this secret. And I'm just going to add the keys here. So the existing secret will be the name of my secret, which is in this case is Postgres, and the rest is existing secret host key, as you see, comes here. So we are going to add all of these now. The host key is host, then comes existing secret port key is port. For me, maybe for you it's different. Then comes database key, for me is database. Then comes user key, then it is user. Let me see if I'm not mistaken. Port key, user key, database key, and password key. And then comes the password key, is the last one. Yeah, so the next thing that you need to know is that with this database, with this Helm chart, comes an ingress. So it's going to install an ingress for you, not install, actually add an ingress resource from Kubernetes for you. And by default, it is false. You could actually add it yourself, but right now I rather to have it installed for me. Why not? And let's actually do that. This means that I'm going to say ingress enabled true. What I need from here is to set the ingress class name. That actually surprises me that it's not really set by default to Nginx, because I guess that's the most popular one. Normally it's used everywhere, but anyways, we have to set it ourselves. It's set to Nginx. I'm using the Nginx ingress controller. Then we have the host name. So this is the part, right? So this part, so I have this path at home registered. I have DNS server here, and I need this subdomain from it. One thing to notice is the path type. So it's set to implementation specific. If you need to, for example, have another host name, for example, farhad.home/ like that's the host name, but your path is going to be like / identity. In that case, it's better that you perhaps set this to prefix and then remove the and then add an annotation to replace anything that comes after this prefix. I have actually an Ingress introduction video. You can check that out. Yeah, so that's all you need right now, I guess, from the Ingress. The other thing that we need is the the Ingress TLS. You need to also turn it on. This configuration that we are going with is actually a production ready configuration, so you definitely can use it in production as well. Then the next configuration we need is annotations, because we need to install a certificate for our Ingress. And for that I'm using Cert Manager, which I guess this Cert Manager, I did it in one of my videos. I'm still using that. That was also a production ready one. That I'm using a self-signed client certificate authority, and then I'm just signing new certificates from that with that authority. So you can do that the same if you are on premise or you're on a home network. But if you are on a public network, then you could simply use Let's Encrypt. So my cluster is here called CA Issuer. So if I can get it here. So the CA issuer is my cluster issuer. And so that's almost done. This would work for a staging environment, but if you are going to actually have it installed on production, I actually recommend you that you come here. Let me find it. Okay. So this says TLS configuration is required. So this is running Keycloak in production mode. What it means is that by default, Keycloak with production is going to handle the HTTPS by itself. So by default, you need to have the TLS enabled, this one. This means that you either can give it your own secret, or it will generate its own certificate, and then it will going to handle the certificate by itself. And this is in the case that you are not running it behind behind an Ingress, but right now we are doing that. So we don't need the we don't need the TLS, because we are going to set the proxy to edge, and the proxy to edge means us. Right now we have TLS termination on the Ingress. The Ingress is going to receive the certificate, and it's going to verify the request, decrypt it, and then send the HTTP request internally from the Nginx Ingress controller to Keycloak. It's going to forward the request, and then Keycloak gonna receive it normally. When you set up the production mode, it's going to actually add more protection, more security features into your Keycloak environment, more restrictive password keys, and so on. So I would recommend for production you definitely turn this on, because otherwise also in the logs you are going to see always that hey, please don't use this in production, and so on. So it's better to have it on when you are on production. So let's just set production to true and set proxy to edge. So I guess this we are actually set right now. One thing that I am missing here is the Keycloak authentication. So when Keycloak, let me find it. It should be, yeah, this one. So this is the first admin user that you're going to need. This is the master user that will give you access to the Keycloak panel. And I'm going to also configure this one. So my admin user, I want to call it admin. And my password, I'm not going to again put the password directly in the values. I'm going to put it inside the secret. I have already the secret. So my secret is admin password, and the password secret key for me is password. So actually, if we check this out inside the secrets, you see that I have also an admin password, and the password is stored inside this secret. So now let's that's all. Let's actually install. So how do you do an installation? Well, you are going to need to run the Helm installation from the OCI path that it has. So let's actually go on and do this. Then copy this, and make this big. No. Okay, so now we are going to call this Keycloak. Our release name is Keycloak. The file that we want to install the values from is values.yaml, and we are going to install it in Keycloak namespace. One thing that you still need to do is that it will not create a database by itself. So this means that you need to come to your Postgres. Let me come to my pgadmin, refresh, create a database called Keycloak. This is the same name as we have in our secret. If I come to the Postgres, if I come to database, as you see, this can be any name that you want. The user of the database can also change. For me, it's the default Postgres, but you can actually add a new user just for Keycloak who can only access the Keycloak database. So now let's actually add this database, and yeah, so now let's run it. So when now it is getting installed, it's going to add certain configurations for you. So as you see, my ingress is already here. It has added some services. In case that you have more than one replica, just use the Keycloak headless, or you have more than one installation, or you have created a cluster Keycloak, then you can actually use the Keycloak headless to communicate with them. And then, yeah, so now it's going to install this. But now I'm wondering why it's actually installing PostgreSQL, because we said don't install this. So let's see. I'm going to actually stop this from being installed because I don't want this setup to be installed. I guess I have a typo in I guess, yep, it's PostgreSQL, not just Postgres. Yes. So let's have it installed again. Yeah, as you see, no Postgres anymore. Now the pod is getting initialized. Yeah, so we are going to, it's going to take a while. Right now I cannot really access here, yeah, because it's still loading. Let's see what it is doing. So now it's going to install certain things, and this is actually where you can install your custom themes too. Well, we can install custom themes in Keycloak. You can build new themes, for example, using Keycloakify. Keycloakify is a React-based framework that you can actually convert React to Keycloak understandable themes and then install this while you are loading up the container using init containers.
A few moments later.
If you have everything already, you should have your ingress now accessible. So the ingress was there, the service now is up, so you can access. You should be able to log in. So let's log in with our username and password we gave to it in the auth object and the values. We are going to ignore this for now. You can just replace this user with a permanent user, permanent admin user, which you're going to control yourself. Now let me go on and then create a new realm. So I'm gonna call this realm demo. Create this. Inside this demo realm, I'm going to create a client and a user. So the client, I'm going to use it in my UI. So let's just call it UI, and I'm just gonna show it demo. This is the display name that it shows on the login. And next, here you don't want client authentication. Client authentication is when you want to do server-to-server authentication, and you will have a client ID, client secret that Keycloak gonna give you, and then you will give that ID and secret to your own service, and then it will get a token from Keycloak for further communication. You don't want implicit flow. It is deprecated. You can still use it, but it's not recommended because on the redirect URL, when you come back from the identity provider will put the access token inside the redirect URL, and then this means that the access token is saved inside your history of the browser. So better not to do that. Just disable it, and then instead Keycloak will handle it, I guess, by a reference token. And now let's actually go on And we are going to configure these also soon. Save this, and now let's go on and create a user. I'm gonna put this demo John Doe. I already have the info, and yeah, why not? Email is verified. And so this is my user. In the realm settings, inside the OpenID endpoint configuration, this is where mostly your applications can come and then get their information about the URLs that the identity provider offers. This is a standard schema. And here I need the token endpoint because I want to show you how I normally test you. Like when you want to just test the backend server, you need a token, right? So you need to issue one. You don't have a UI yet. So in this case, you take that endpoint, and then you come Postman or any other or curl. So then you will, let's just run this. It is a post, and it has an XML-based form request. So let's add our properties. Grant type is password. Our username is demo, as we created one. The password we didn't set, and the client ID is UI. So this won't work because obviously I have not added password. Invalid user credentials. There's no password. So now I have to go create a password because Keycloak by default will not do that. So let's come here to the credentials, set a password 123 It is not a temporary password. If you set it to a temporary password, the first login, it will ask the user that put a permanent password by itself. We don't need that. And you cannot also log in with the temporary password or get a token with a temporary password. The user has to create a password by himself. But for us right now, for testing, that doesn't matter. Let me set the password that we just added here. So as you see, I have a token now received. This is the part that is going to be used for authentication. And this is what is going to be used for refreshing the access token. This access token is valid for 5 minutes. As you see here, 5 minutes, this access token is valid. I mostly would recommend I will add to 20 minutes. To 2 minutes. It's better. One important thing that I want to point out regarding the endpoints is that if you have this set to a really long time, this 30 minutes that it says here, don't use this endpoint for verifying your access token, because what will happen with this is that it looks at the access token as a very standalone token. So if it is stolen and it has a 30 minutes lifespan, like how would you, and you may ask, how can it be stolen? Well, an attacker just can give a snippet to the user, and the snippet could run inside the console of your application, and then just like console of the web browser for the user, and then can just get the token and then email it or send it via an API through fetch request to the attacker's endpoints. So in that case, the token is stolen, and then if it is a 30 minutes token, then the attacker can still access all of the resources with that token, just can store it in their own system, and then access everything from that user. So don't use this only if you have it the standard lifespan for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, but use the introspection endpoint if you want to use more, if you want to have more security, because what it does is that your server is going to ask the Keycloak, is this user still valid? And if you suspect some suspicious activity, if there are some weird activity in the system, you may come to the UI who is issuing your front-end tokens, and then inside the sessions, then you can actually end this session. You can kick this user out. So then this way, when the backend asks for this token, then the token is no longer valid. But if you end the session and you are using this endpoint, the token will still be valid, because what it does is that it's just a public key endpoint, right? So it will just get all the public keys from your identity provider, and your server side will verify the signature on the token, and it says you're good. It doesn't check if the session is still there or not. So we are using the JWKs today, but for security, I would recommend, like for more security and especially if you have an environment which the token lives much longer, go with the introspection URL. But that's like very advanced cybersecurity, right? So that's very advanced, and we may still also get into that, but it's just a good thing to point out for you. Let's now, actually enough talking, let me go and check what is inside this token. I love this website. This is the JWT IO, and then it will decode the token for you. A token, as you see, is combined of 3 parts. It is shown with the color, separated with the dots, and this is the header, this is the payload, and this is the signature. As you see, the signature information is here, the payload information is here, and the header information is here. What interests us is the payload information here. So here, as you see, there are some roles inside this payload. This is the name of the user, the username, the email, his ID. So this is the user ID. As you see, this ID is exactly the same as this ID here. This means you can actually use this ID in your database whenever this user is creating something, and then like he owns then that resource. And the expiration. So this is how even with the JWKS URI, since the expiration is already in here, the user then can the backend can actually say if the token is expired or not. And you may ask, okay, but this payload is editable, right? No, it's not, because if I change this now, it is not valid anymore, because the signature, as I said, is a combination of the payload and the private key. So this cannot really be easily changed and tampered with. Now that we have everything on Keycloak ready, let's actually jump into the UI, see how we can issue a token and then use it in our REST calls and GraphQL calls. I have a super simple view application here. So everything that I'm going to use, you can also use in React and Angular, because I'm just going to use simple TypeScript packages. The first thing that we need is OIDC client TS. So I'm just going to add that OIDC client TS, and actually let's run the application and see what is right now in it. So as you see, nothing special, just says hello YouTube. We are going to go through 3 phases. First phase is that you are not communicating with the backend, but you want your application still to be showing some user info, perhaps the avatar at the top right where shows the user's initials, right? So how do we now do that? So how do we get the user to redirect to the sign-in page? Let's set up the identity client TS that we just added. I'm going to add an auth TS file. A user manager object, I'm going to create it from the user manager. It has some settings now. So authority. The authority path you can find from the Keycloak settings. This is the issuer path. You need this one. Now you need your client ID. This is the UI we created. You need the scope. Well, by default it's set token ID, but I need more information. And you are going to need a redirect URI. So what is the redirect URI? Well, the redirect URI simply is the URI which the user is going to redirect to after the authentication against the identity provider, and the identity provider will send you the access token. So you need to set this up in your application. So I'm going to give a path, and then we are going to set it up together. Mostly I'm going to call it callback, and now let's actually go on and create this callback. So, well, first, here, I'm going to first also export this user manager. We need to add the callback route, and we need to add the callback page. So that's a very bad name. So now let's go on and add lang is ts setup template. Well, here it's nice because now you can actually say, hey, like loading, or show an animation after they come back if it takes some time to log them in, or check some other stuff, get some more information about the user in this page. But one important thing that we have to do is to get the state of the user from the URL and save it in the local storage. This is going to be done automatically by ODC client TS, but let's see how it does it. So I'm going to do it unmounted, and I need it to be async. What I need to do is to actually say, okay, await, get the user from await user manager, which we got from there, sign in, redirect, callback. And I'm gonna show you why we are going to use this. So that's it. So now you say if user is available. So if I got a user, I'm going to also put this inside the try catch. So if it failed, then I'm going to, if it failed, I'm going to do some certain stuff. So to show an error or something. So here I'm going to need my router. So let's add the router, and I need the route. Why do I need that? Because now after the callback, I need to get user somewhere. Why do I need the route? Well, I show you, because when you come back from the, actually first, maybe let's not do that. Yeah, so we are going to comment this out. This is needed to actually clear the path in our URL, because when Keycloak comes back from, when we come back from the identity provider, there are some extra information in the URL which we don't really want. I'm going to now say, okay, I had the user, push route, and move the user to home. Well, that's it for here. And yeah, also we forgot about our catch. This is overkill right now. I mean, if it wants to throw an exception, it will throw an exception. Doesn't really need that unless you have a loader, you want to stop the loader and show the message. You don't really need it here. So now what happens? So let's actually come here and add this. So this is callback, and this is our callback page with the callback name. So what happened here? Nothing. I cannot really do anything. Now if I go to my callback, what will happen? So it still shows login, but it shows an error too. So if I come to the errors, it says no state in response, and that would be the state that comes from Keycloak. There's no state, and it's right. So now let's see how we can log the user in. Where do we want to log the user? We want to log the user in every pages except the callback, right? So the callback should be not protected. It's already kind of protected. It needs a state. So I'm going to use the router before each. Make it async, and here I am going to use the try catch, because here actually I'm going to throw an exception if the user has, I failed to get the user information and then actually log them in. So here I'm going to, I should have the user when I come here. So I say user manager that get user. So then I say, hey, if the user is there, so what I have is to, from, and next. And here actually I would say if to that name is not callback, because we said we don't want to protect the callback. So we're just going to do this, and then we are going to return next at the bottom. So here we say, hey, if the user was not there, so if it was there, it can just go on, no problem. If the user is not there, I will still throw an error. So the user is missing or something. And then in the catch, so it doesn't matter now if this throws an exception or this throws an exception. I'm here going to say, okay, there is an exception. Perhaps I'm going to log it, console that error E, and then I'm going to say await user manager that sign in redirect. So now if I do this and I be in my home, I should go to Keycloak. As you see, I did go to Keycloak. It logged me in. I was already logged in with this user. So let's actually see what will happen. When we are not logged in. So let me go on into this user in Keycloak. In the UI, it has a session. I'm gonna kick him out. And now actually I'm going to remove his information also here. So this is the token which was generated for this user. And there are some cookies from Keycloak. I'm just gonna get rid of them too. And now let's see what will happen. So as you see, the user didn't exist. Now it went to Keycloak. Now I can log in. And it comes back to the callback first and then comes back to here. So as you see, this is the thing that I said that is weird about. So when you come back, you have this big big state in parameter inside your URL, and you want to get rid of it. To get rid of it, you come here into your callback, you say window.history.push state. You want to push a clear state. The second parameter can be set to nothing. You want to be clean, you can just set it to the title of your document, of course. And then you need the path that you are in, so to keep it clean. And the path, you can get it from your route. Well, the route already gives you the slash, you don't need it. So I would set this to here. And now let's see what will happen. So, well, right now will nothing happen because the path is already here. Let's kill the session again. Well, I'm still logged in because, of course, the session is removed but I still have the token in my session storage. Get rid of it, and also we are going to get rid of some. Actually, I guess I am redirected, yes. So demo 123.123, let's log in. As you see now, this ugly part is removed. Now, why did we do that? So let's say hello to this user who is logged in. So now we are going to come back to our index page. So here I'm going to say, hey, I need this user. Of course, you can make a lot of components, nice components that show this stuff, but this is not about Vue.js in this. So this way you can actually reuse this concept in your React or Angular too. That's why I'm not getting into creating so much component inside Vue. So I'm going to have a ref for this user, and this user object is an OIDC client user, and this is missing for Vue 2, unmounted. And now here I'm going to actually get my user, right? So I'm pretty sure that when I come here, the user is there. So I don't really need to check anything extra. So I can say, hey, this is the user, set the value to await user manager get user. Now what I do is that I say if the user is there, I want to say user profile that well, family name, like to do it formally, and his first name or given name in this case. So as you see now, I have hello John Doe. So now I am authenticated. So the token now is issued. Let's go on and put the token inside a REST request and a GraphQL request and see how it works and what will happen if the token gets expired. So my backend is in C#. I'm also not going to go really deep into this, because maybe you are using Golang or maybe you are using Node.js, PHP, but the concept is the same. All of them support HTTP clients, so you can actually make a request, get the signing keys, and then verify your signature. So in my case, I have added my JWKS URI as you see, the valid issuer and the valid audience that that by default in Keycloak is always setting it to account. And here I'm building my token validator parameters on the backend. So I say, hey, validate my issuer, validate my audience, validate the lifetime, and so on. So I will also say how you should get the signing keys, and then return the keys, and then it will validate it. Let's see what this service has. So let me open it up. First, it has a GraphQL endpoint. So if I come to the GraphQL endpoint, this should still work, I guess. Yeah, so I have a token. If I disable this token, the user is not authorized. If I enable it, it simply is going to give me the user information. This is everything inside the token. But since I unsend it, it says it's not authorized. Now you can get this user information to use it in some other places, but I just simply right now return this. What else do I have is a REST endpoint with a similar payload, like response payload. So I have a get on users that is first going to return 401. And if I give this a token, the same token as here, so still valid, I hope. Yep. So then now I have my token information back. So now let's see how can we do this REST call in our UI with Axios. So if I go back to our UI code and bring it here, I have already set up my Axios. So here is returning an API. In Axios, you can intercept the request and the response. So first, let's check the request. In the request, I'm going to say the API interceptors request that use for the config. And at the end, you have to return the config. What I want to add in the config, the headers. What do I want to add to these headers? I want to add my bearer token. So let's go on and do that. First, for that, I need my user. Const user, await user manager, get the user, and this is an async method. So we have the user manager that gets user, and then now I say if user that access token that length, if I have an access token, then put this into config. So inside the config, inside the headers, I'm going to say the authorization is bearer and the user that access token, that's it. And then everything is good. Otherwise, this means that, oh, the token is not there. I would try perhaps to, well, in this case, the token is not there at all. So I have to actually get the user in. And this is all we have to do. I will actually show you what will happen if the user is there, but it is not active. So like it's expired, then what will happen? So here I'm actually going to say simply log in the user, go to sign in redirect, because this is a case that if the user has been in the page long enough and now the maybe or not long enough, it's the case that you do not have that route guard. So in that case, I would add this. Mostly this is enough, or any GraphQL token retrieval enough, and in not having the access token redirect, because you mostly at the beginning gonna query something. You are going to query some user information in the beginning, so you need the token anyways. So it's better that you have one redirect point. Don't redirect in different places. You should have one redirect point, because then you may get into a loop and you don't know which one these are redirecting. It's a pain. So it's better to know which point of your application needs the first login and then causes a redirection. So this has to help me to get my token. But first, let's actually comment it out and see what will happen if I just don't do it, without it. So I'm coming to my index page, the simple page, and I'm going to actually add a button. It says REST user info, and click get rest user info. I'm going to have the function here. Here let's actually now use that API. So we have the API here, we have a get method, and the API is already configured with our backend. So here I just need to say I want to access the user's endpoint and await the response. And what do I want to do with the response is that, let me see, I can actually add some information here. So what do I get? Let me get its first name and last name only. So first name string, last name string. So I just alert something, say hello response data last name and data that's first name. And of course this may fail right now, so I'm going to put this into a try catch. And this is going to be our error point. So let's just do error B. And now let's see what will happen if I click this button, which is not doing authentication. So let's open it up. Because of our check, it will log in first. This is our guard login. Okay, it got here. Now let me open the inspect element and add it to my right side here, so you can actually see what's going on. If I can do this, would be nice. So let's see. Now I will do this. Oh, I got an error. So I got the error also here. As you see, it's a 401 and there is no header on it. So now let's actually go back here and add this. See what will it do. So now this is added. Let's refresh and we're going to make the call. Yep, we have, okay, so we have a course. I have to configure that in the backend. Oops. So let's go on and configure that quickly. I didn't want to jump into C#, but apparently it's inevitable. Let's go to program, builder, get services, and course, options that add default policy. No, let's say policy allow any origin, any method, and any header. And I say app.use course inside my middleware. Let it run. Now we make the request again. Okay, it made the request, but it returned undefined. Let's see now what is wrong again. Let's actually see what is returned. Actually, it returned the information. So the problem is inside the code. Let's get back here and see what is actually here wrong. So in this case, I would rather to actually have the response logged to see what is in here. I see. Then in this case, we are not going to do this. We have to first say const payload of user info JSON.parse response of data. And then now we have the user info. Then we should be okay. Now you have the information, of course. Yeah, so this was how it worked. So here, as you see, I have the token passed inside the authorization, and now your authorization would work. So now let's see what will happen if the backend now returns 401, and we are going to actually make it do that. Even though the token is, because we want to know what will happen if the token gets expired, but we are not going to wait for 5 minutes, so we are going to fake it. Let me go back to my Axios here. I'm going to add a new interceptor, and that would be a response interceptor. So I will check the response and say, okay, if the response status is 401, now, okay, check. Now you need to actually check. So here you have to check if there is an access token. If there is an access token, you will get this access to, actually I'm going to just get the user first. Wait, user manager, that gets user. And then, so now I have the user, I get the access token, and then I said if access token, if the access token exists, this means that, oh, the access token was there, but it was expired, or something is wrong with it. Maybe the session is also ended. Maybe I was using introspection in the backend. The backend says, nope, you cannot access. So here I have to return the response eventually, but now what do? We do a silent renew. Well, by default, the OIDC client does an automatic silent renew. So don't remove it. So if I come to here, there is this automatic silent renew, and I guess every 1 minute they check again. Yeah, the automatic renew attempt starts 1 minute before the access token expires, and by default it's set to true. We are not going to touch it, it's fine. So it can renew the token every minute. And now here, but it can happen that maybe the token had something, an issue with it, so the token is expired earlier. Then it is not renewed yet by the OIDC, or you have that option turned off for any reason. You want to handle it by yourself. So here, what I do is that I simply say, use the manager, that silent sign in silent. So this way now it will use the refresh token that it has inside the application local storage. So if I come back here, actual session storage, and then here inside the refresh token, it uses the refresh token to renew my token. So now let's check what will happen. So here, yeah, so I'm here simply using this, and then I just return the response or not. That doesn't make any sense. So if the token doesn't exist at all, so if the token doesn't exist and I made the call, in that case I would redirect them. But one other thing is that even if this fails, because this also may fail, because the response may be 400 from Keycloak, because when the refresh token is not valid, also Keycloak gonna give you 400, and then it will throw an exception. And if you're not handling it, then you're not doing anything, your application gonna stack. So here I'm gonna say user manager, then do an actual sign in. So I'm just actually going to sign in the user. And then I'm going to also here, if the token doesn't exist, again, I'm going to just simply sign in the user. One important thing is that we are going to actually check. So let's actually check this together right now to see how it works. So right now this should always work, because yeah, so the token is there, nothing gets renewed. And now let's actually make the backend fail to authenticate the token. How you can do that? By simply, I don't know, change this to $M. And now let's run. Check the network tab, and now let's preserve the logs. Do this. So it gives us a 401. The backend gives us a 401. And let's see what happened that it didn't do the redirection. So the token had existed. It apparently has successfully renewed the token. So if I get its response, I guess we can console like the response. So the refresh has been successful in this case. So now if I run this again, I see the user information. So the refresh has been successful. And the reason that I get this error is that, again, so I'm not redirecting, my backend is returning weird information. So that's why the response is failing. So let's actually fix it, and we can go up and set up GraphQL. So for GraphQL, I'm actually using Apollo client, which is similar in React as well, or you can also use it in Angular. So in order to add authentication for Apollo client, so first, of course, you have to set up the basics of Apollo, and now we are going to actually see how we can add an asynchronous interceptor in Apollo to fetch our token and put it inside the headers. So in order to do that, Apollo has a method called setContext. So with this one, it actually gets an asynchronous callback, and with that, you can use it to fetch your token. Let's see how. So here we have an auth link, and I'm going to just use the setContext now. And here I make this asynchronous. The first one we don't need, but the second one is the headers, which we are going to return. And now here you can get your token. So await user manager that get user and says if user that access token that length, if it is there, then I say okay, nice, then return headers. That would be anything that is already inside the headers, and I want to add authorization as well now. So I will say user that access token, and that's it. So it is there, so I will just return this. Then otherwise I will say, hey, do this user manager that get user manager that signing redirect, like that. Now we have this auth link. We have to also use it in the Apollo links. We have to combine it with our HTTP link. So we are going to use Apollo link from. First comes the auth link, and then comes the HTTP link. It's like a middle verb. I want to first do my headers, add my headers, then I want to send a request. So now I am all set here. Now let's come back here. Let's do the same as we did with the HTTP. I'm gonna comment this out, see what will happen, and I'm actually gonna come back here. Say const. So I need to run a query. I already have the function here. There's an empty function. Let's write the query. So my query is query get user info, and user info ID, first name, last name, and email. By the way, this autocomplete is because I have the Apollo client installed in VS Code, and I have given my schema path to the Apollo config. So now everywhere I open a GQL tag, it knows that it has to show me the schema. So we can use it. It's pretty cool. So now let's actually run this. We have our Apollo client exported. Now we say response await Apollo client query. Let's give this a nice type. Last name string. And now if everything has gone right, if I say first I say user info is response data user info, and then I say alert GraphQL, and then say hello user info dot last name user info dot first name. And now let's actually go on and see what will happen, because we commented out the authentication part, right? So let's go on and clear everything that we have here and check again. Why? Set context is not there. It should not send a request. Let's refresh the page. Ah, it's not right. Okay, let's see what is the error. Yeah, so this is a typical error. Whenever you are using Apollo client inside Vue, this is a Vue tip. Go on and add this core at the end, so it doesn't really bug you anymore. Now, if I run this, I get an error, and the error says basically that the user is not authenticated because, yes, there's no token here. Let's now go on and uncomment this and run this again. It works, the token is sent, and I am authenticated. Let's actually give you some tips. I'm not gonna get into them directly. This is something that you play around by yourself. One question you may ask is that, okay, hey Farhad, now what will happen if I have the token and sent it and the token is expired? Well, before send it, actually you can check for the user expiration. So here just say expired. If it is expired, just don't send it. And the other thing is that inside the XCS, you say, okay, I renewed the token, but my request was already made. Now what should I do? Well, you actually have access still to the request which was made inside this response, right? So if I do this request exactly is what we did first, right? So this is actually going to be used again to send another request. You can simply say API.request your request and wait for it, right? So then you can add a counter and say, okay, if I tried 1 or 2 times, then just leave it and then just show an error or redirect to the login page. So then this way you actually know what to do. So it's almost morning now. In this video, we actually learn now how to authenticate a user against a backend using a SPA application. In my case, it was Vue.js. We learned how to install Keycloak, and we learned how to configure Keycloak. Now, the configuration which I showed you, it's actually the same in other identity providers. You basically need a client. It's a public client. You need the authority path. Then you need the JWKS URI from the identity provider. And then everything is the same. You just need to know these terms, and then you can reuse them in Auth0, in Okta, and in Keycloak. And in your on-premise legacy identity provider as well. Well, that's it with this video. I hope that you guys go and check it out yourself, make ideas, create a nice page, a login page with the, oh, my time is also up, with the login, with a nice page with the login and so on. In the next videos, actually, I may go on with creating a theme for Keycloak, because that's a question for everyone, because they don't want this ugly default weird bluish page. So we are going to focus on that, and also we are going to check how authorizations work. So how different types of authorization and how you can handle it in your application. So with that being said, I hope I have inspired you enough to actually go on and check something like this for yourself, or use it for your home project or your startup project or whatever else you are working on. If you like this video, please add a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. If you didn't like this video, also add a thumbs down and comment it down below, like what I can improve. And I will be happy to do so. Then until next time, cheers.